At night the guardians were scarcely more numerous, but it must be remarked that at this time the palace was only separated from the public garden by a simple terrace of no great breadth, and raised only by 3 or 4 steps. If then a sentinel failed in his outlook, an evil-disposed person could easily climb the walls and get into the apartments. For this reason, precautionary rounds were increased. One night Ségur found on a windowsill a man who was only waiting for a suitable moment to slip inside. This was the only serious alarm, and except for Ségur, it would be still unknown. Another time, after a state reception, a man was found hidden behind the curtains of the state cabinet. It was a poor madman, an old chimney sweep at the Tuileries, who imagined that he should discover the soul of his father in the fires of the lights. He was taken to Charenton. These are the incidents recorded. In spite of the facilities which they would have met with, none of the conspiracies formed against Napoleon aimed at attacking him at the Tuileries. So great was the conviction that he was well guarded. We have seen that this was not the use he made of his army. At night, no more than during the day, did the rounds enter the appartement ordinaire of the emperor. The aide-de-camp was on duty, and he slept there, in the salon de service, his head leaning against the door. Some time later, an orderly officer and a page were added. In the rooms immediately outside the salon, there slept a brigadier and a footman. In the apartment interior, near the door, slept a Mameluke, another valet de chambre, and a garçon de garde-robe. Had their chair beds in little dark closets. To gain access to the emperor when some urgent dispatch arrived, the aide-de-camp knocked at the door against which the Mameluke lay. The Mameluke opened it, passed in the aide-de-camp, and shut it again carefully, so that the aide-de-camp might be satisfied that no one could have followed him. This aide-de-camp then scratched at the door of the bedchamber. This door was shut inside. The emperor got up and opened the door only when he had recognized the voice. These precautions, as he had specially explained to his brother Joseph, were minutely observed. They give no trouble, said he, and succeed in inspiring confidence, apart from the fact that they may in reality save your life. During nearly the whole reign, the precautions thus established seemed to suffice. In May 1806, a considerable number of the bodyguard of the old king, who had not emigrated, and having received employment, had given proofs of zeal, requested to be attached to the person of the emperor and to be reconstituted as before. Napoleon refused their services. It did not seem to him suitable, but as they were people of honor, he sent them to Naples to his brother Joseph, recommending them warmly. At a later time, in 1808, when Jerome was thinking of establishing a bodyguard, the emperor wrote to him, "I do not think that you ought to have a bodyguard. It is not the etiquette of our family." But on December 30th, 1812, possibly after having stated the services rendered during the retreat of the Escadron Sacré, and especially to guard himself from the consequences of an attempt similar to that of Mallet, the emperor dictated the following note: "It is considered that the Garde Impériale is not sufficiently brilliant, and that its uniforms and decorations do not come up to the splendid majesty which ought to surround a sovereign. It is considered that the gates of the palace and the doors of the apartments are not sufficiently guarded, either because the ushers and porters do not do their duty, or because they are not armed as they should be. It might be well to consider a plan for the formation of companies of gardes du corps, which, while they act as a real guard, would also serve as a training school for officers of the army. A plan might also be drawn up for the formation of one or several companies of doorkeepers who would perform duties similar to the Hungarian Garde Noble at Vienna or the 100 Swiss in Saxony. They should receive a handsome uniform. The gardes du corps might have cuirasses." This scheme was studied with attention by Duroc and by Clark. The emperor had it brought under his notice several times and had several draft decrees drawn up by which everything was arranged to the minutest detail: the constitution of the body, the uniform, the duties in time of peace and of war, the privileges of the officers and of the guards. But little by little, in view of the urgency of the situation, the idea was modified. It was no longer a question of bodyguards furnishing a post in the first room of the apartments of the emperor, of the empress, and the king of Rome. It was a question of soldiers providing their own kit, to whom, as an inducement for serving and for joining the army immediately, special advantages were promised. From what happened to General de Ségur, it may be asked whether his bodyguards to the Gardes d'Honneur would have really presented the guarantees of fidelity and devotion which the emperor sought. This scheme took 9 years to draw up, for in spite of what certain witnesses have said about it, it is doubtful whether, although planned a long time back, it was, as is said, the fear of making the Imperial Guard discontented which caused it to be constantly postponed. The Austrian marriage and the attempt to Malay suffice to explain, but not to justify it. No cases exist where bodyguards have prevented a popular revolution from making its way into a palace, but there are cases where the bodyguard itself has made a revolution in the palace.